Okay, sorry guys, I'm a little bit late. Apologies for that. But like, anyways, irrespective of that, we'll start the class quickly. Yeah. So, firstly, good morning, everyone. I'm hoping everybody had a good Diwali. Yeah, and now we're back to the form. So, yeah. Basically, in the last class, we were discussing, we were doing the revision of chapter 2, which was the part 2, right? Because these chapters are a bit longer, we thought we won't be doing any one-shot revisions, and therefore we'll be dividing it into different revisions, right? Different parts for the revisions. So today we are in the final part of discussing chapter 2, which is Kings, Farmers and Towns, right? So with this session, chapter 2 ka revision will be over. We can start probably the next chapter in the next class. Yeah. So that's what the class is going to be today. So heads up on that. Also, a couple of you are already here. So good morning, everyone who just joined. I'll quickly do the introductory part. I'm hoping others will join in the meantime. Anyways, as most of you all know, my name is Nikitha and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel, and I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th. And as far as my educational qualifications are concerned, I have recently graduated from Ashoka University with a bachelor's degree, and I have a major in history and a minor in political science there. So that's a little bit about my background. Um, cool. Anyways, quickly moving on to Unacademy's plus features. So, firstly, you can sit at your own houses and listen to the live classes taught by top educators of India, and all of them are available on one single platform. And there's exhaustive coverage of syllabus, there's mentorship and guidance provided to you. Along with that, there's also access to different study materials, which are usually in the form of PDF, and there are practice tests, there are live test series, and also there are regular doubt clearing sessions and answer writing sessions, right? So those are a couple of Unacademy's plus benefits. And when it comes to pricing, um, the prices you can see on the left side of the screen are the actual prices, right, with 6 different ranges. But if you use the code, which is TUM10, you'll be basically given a 10% off on the subscriptions, and then you can only pay this much, right? Like the prices on the right side of the screen. So I highly recommend you all to subscribe it and also use the code. Okay, and quickly moving on to Unacademy's iconic, in the sense, here the features are even better and greater, in the sense that there's personal mentorship provided, there are live doubt solving sessions, weekly reports, parent connect, and also study planners. The same thing applies to iconic pricing as well. The prices on the left side are pre-discounted, right side post-discounted. You can use the code, which is TUM10. Here the durations are even more when compared to plus, in the sense that we have 9 ranges of subscriptions, not 6. So have a look at them and feel free to go ahead with whichever one you feel right or comfortable with. So quickly about the Bugs Bounty, it's basically an opportunity for you learners out there to report any sort of inappropriate content in the video, and you can literally be the first one to report any sort of particular issue, and you can claim your prize for that. And you can also report this content using the form which is in the description below of this video, so go check that out. And regarding Emerge, it's an Academy's test. It's a weekly test conducted, which according to the guidelines aligned by the CBSE. So that will act as some sort of practice for your term 1 boards, and it usually happens every week, right? So the details of it are in the description below. You can go enroll yourselves and take part in the weekly quizzes, which are highly helpful. Okay, that being said, I think we can start the class. We're already like past time by a couple of minutes. Anyways, Sahil is here. Hi, Sahil. Good morning. I'm doing very well, Sahil. I'm hoping you're well too. Okay, today is Bhai Dooj. Anyways, thank you and wish you the same. Cool. That's good to hear, Sahil. Keep the spirits up. throughout the class. We'll continue, yeah, but like in case anybody has any questions at any point of time, just feel free to drop your questions in the chat box. Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about kings, farmers, and towns, which is the second chapter's title. So under that, we've already done 2 classes ka revision, right? This is the third class revision, and under that, the first sub theme we'll be exploring is towns and trade, right? As you know, trade is one of the very, very important factors of all of these Mahajanapadas and the later kingdoms, right? Mauryas, Guptas, Vakatakas, everybody's kingdom flourished only because of extensive trade, right? Be it internal trade, be it external trade, whatever it is, trade was an important factor. So we'll talk about that and also the emergence of new cities and towns in detail in this subtopic, right? So we'll start off with new cities. So the thing we've talked about in last class is after the downfall of Harappan civilization, right, there were no big cities that were emerging. Yeah, almost for until 1500 years, there were no cities after the Harappan civilization ended. But after 1500 years, new cities started emerging, right? Like urban centers started coming up almost in the 6th century BCE, and that too throughout the parts of the subcontinent, not just in one particular place, but throughout the parts, right? So what do we see here? A spark in the increase of number of urban centers, right? So that's one important thing. Okay, Sahil has a request to make. What exactly is that, Sahil? If you can put that down, I'll just have a look at it. What do you mean arrange the class from starting, Sahil? As in like go through the revisions of every chapter, like from first chapter again? Is that what you mean? I mean, we've just started doing revisions like before this we did the first chapter ka revision. This is chapter 2. After that we have 4 more chapters. So if you need chapter 1 and 2 ka revision again, then you have to wait till the next 4 chapters are over, Sahil. I mean, for now, I think you can go back and look at the video. We've done like a one-shot revision video on chapter 1. So I'm so sorry, but you know, like other people have doubts in other chapters. So I thought we'll do a one proper order. Probably like after I do the next remaining 4 chapters, if I still have time before the exams, then we can do a first and second again. But for the first, I think you have to go back to the video and continue from wherever we are doing right now. Yeah, because we really don't have time, Sahil. But like in case you have any specific doubts and all, just stay back after the class and like ask doubt for 5 minutes, right? Then I'll clear them out. That's not a problem. Yeah, I'm really sorry, but like I can't go back again. It'll take another 4 sessions for me. Then I won't be able to cover the last chapter, right? Which is unfair to some other students. So yeah. Anyways, so the next point, the first point we were talking about is emergence of cities in different parts of the subcontinent, which was very, very crucial because for almost 1500 years we did not have any, and now all of a sudden after 1500 years we have emergence of new cities, right? So all of these cities which were coming up, right, like within India, they were majorly capitals of all these 16 Mahajanapadas we had. So that itself means that we already had 16 major towns in India because we had 16 major capitals, right? And most probably like all 16 or whatever the number of cities they were there, all of them were located very strategically. They had a strategic importance, right? When I mean strategic importance, their location is strategically placed. Yeah, so they were located along routes of communication, be it riverine communication, land communication, sea communication, whatever it is. They are located on the trade routes, so that it again, why is that so? Because in that case the city will be benefited or profited because of the trade, right? So we look at some examples of cities which are strategically located. So First one is Pataliputra, one of the major cities, right? Pataliputra also has a strategic importance because it is located on the riverine routes, somewhere in the today's Bihar state, where the Ganga or the tributaries of Ganga flow. Near one of those riverine tributaries, Pataliputra is located, right? And when it comes to Ujjain, they are located along the land routes, right? Again, another strategic importance. But some other towns such as Puhar, they were near the coast. They were basically coastal cities, right? So usually like ports and all were located right there near the coastal cities, right? So whatever trade was happening, whatever imports and exports were happening, Puhar became the major center as a coastal town, right? So there were other cities as well, like Mathura, for example, which were bustling centers of commercial, cultural, and political activity. Like it's just so happening in the city, right? Like you enter that city, like 24/7, some or the other activity is happening, be it commercial, be it cultural, or political, right? So these are the features of some of the important new cities that were coming up in the subcontinent. Okay. Yes, Sahil, you're absolutely right. In your textbook, there's a box towards the left side, basically giving us the history of Pataliputra, right? Just like, again, I'll just tell you in two words, right? Just like any other city, right? Any other city which have been in the Indian subcontinent, this city of Pataliputra also has a certain history, right? Firstly, it was an abandoned land, and then later some people settled there, so it became an important center. And then after a few years, again it was abandoned, and then finally it became the capital of Magadha, right? Then it became an important political center because it was the capital, right? Then all of this huge structures, buildings, houses, all of them developed. So basically, we see a development of Pataliputra under the Magadha and Mauryan rulers, right? uh, After some time that was also abandoned, yeah. So just like any other city, there are time periods when that particular city flourishes, and at some point of time we see a decline in the city, right? So that's the basic data that the textbook has given about Pataliputra, right? So yeah, now quickly we'll move on to urban populations, where it's titled as elites and craft persons, right? So what do we see here? Because urban cities are coming up, people whoever are settling in these cities are referred to as urban populations, right? So usually whoever used to live in these urban cities, they were majorly either elite people, yeah, like rich wealthy people, or craftsperson who are involved in different kinds of craft work, right? So these were the two category of people who were majorly living in the urban cities. So under that, we have the first point we have is kings and rural elites living in fortified cities, right? Fortification is just so important back in those times, just to protect themselves from neighboring states and enemies, right? Just keep this one point in your head, irrespective of which kingdom, irrespective of which timeline, every city was fortified in the ancient India, right? Because it was really crucial, right? So that was one feature, right? Like the urban cities were fortified. Number two, in these Pataliputra or like other extensive capitals, which were the capitals of Mahajanapadas at some point of time, to conduct research or to do all of these excavations and all by the archaeologists, it has become really difficult, because these are the places where people are still living. They're not barren lands, they're not empty lands, but they have been populated by people even in the 21st century, 20th century. So it has become difficult for archaeologists to go and carry out their archaeological work or excavations, right? But that was not the case with Harappan sites, because the present day Harappan sites of Dolavira, Kalibangan, Lothal, Mohenjo-daro, all of these major cities of Harappan civilization, they are still abandoned. Like nobody is living there now or at least 20th century, right? So it was easy for archaeologists to go and explore, but because people are living in present day the Mahajanapada sites, all these Mahajanapada capitals, it's very difficult for them to explore, right? Because you can't just go and be like, you go out of the house because you have to carry out excavation. They can't say that, right? So that's why it has been difficult. But nonetheless, with whatsoever means and all, some artifacts have been recovered, right? It can either be randomly somebody is trying to construct a house in that particular area or construct a mall, and then they'll find something valuable or something, some sort of artifacts. Then they'll come and report it to the nearby offices or nearby archaeological department, right? So in that manner, they have collected a wide range of artifacts, right? So yeah. Uh, Okay, what was the important thing in new cities? Um, okay, just remember like a couple of points, Sahil, regarding the new cities. Number one, they emerged only after 1500 years, right? We were talking about this slide, right? So after 1500 years, new cities came up. Yeah. The second point is all of these cities were either capitals of Mahajanapadas. Yeah, and they were strategically located along the trade routes, right? So that the three important points. I'll just underline these three. Yeah, I'm hoping you got it. Okay, so we were talking about urban populations, right? So a lot of these artifacts have been recovered by different means, right? So these are not just limited to like one category, right? These are different range of artifacts. For example, you will find fine pottery bowls, dishes. Sometimes they had a rough finish, sometimes they had a smooth, glossy finish. Yeah, these glossy finished potteries and bowls are known as northern black polished ware. It was very expensive and therefore it was only used by rich people, right? So other than that, like ornaments are found, tools are found, weapons, vessels, figurines, all of these different range of materials, and also these are made up of different materials, right? They were made up of gold sometimes, sometimes silver, copper, bronze, which are like expensive materials, right? But sometimes they're also made up of like cheap materials like terracotta, shell, glass, or ivory, right? So different objects, different artifacts made up of different materials, right? So yeah, any questions still there? Please just let me know by putting in the chat box. um, if none, then I can probably go ahead. What was ivory? Sahil, ivory is nothing but another soft material, right? So how do I put this? I don't know. Like I can just give you like random examples of where ivory used. We have all of these charts, right? Like white color, like different color chart paper. If you look at the same chart paper, it is also available in ivory material. Ivory is a little bit thicker and harder than the present day chart paper we use. And ivory sometimes it's also used to make jewelry. So it's just one kind of soft material. Yeah, just put that in mind. Okay, cool. UPSC lover account is here. Hi, good morning. Anyways, so if that's the only doubt we have, then we can go ahead. Cool. So yeah, right. Like we're now moving to the second century BCE. So once you step into the second century BCE, we find short votive inscriptions in a number of sites. Again, what are votive inscriptions? Votive inscriptions basically give us information if there are any donations given to, or like land grants given to religious institutions. Yeah, only religious institutions. Then these are obviously like recorded on a particular inscription, either on rock or either on copper plate, right? So inscriptions which talk about donations given to religious institutions are called as votive inscriptions, right? So for now, if you remember, if you like come across the word votive, the first word which should strike your mind is religious, right? So just blindly remember votive, religious. Yeah. Okay. I have a couple of questions here. Prayaga Prashasti is what? Asks UPSC Loud. Okay, cool. So I'm hoping you know what Prashasti is, right? Prashasti is nothing but they are inscriptions only. But let's say I'll give you my example. Yeah. Suppose I'm the king. Yeah. I'm asking somebody like a court poet of mine or some sculpture of some person to randomly write an inscription about me. Yeah, not of what I did, but to basically write an inscription to praise me, right? Like this king is that, like he's ambitious, he conquered so many territories, he's powerful, like all of those positive things, all of those good things, without even like mentioning of one negative aspects. So basically praising yourself, those are called as prashastis. Yeah, in the same manner, if you look at a Gupta king, yeah, this Prayag Prashasti was basically inscribed by Harishena, who was the court poet of the Gupta ruler, right? So it was basically installed in a place called Prayaga, which today we call it as Allahabad, right? So that is why it is named after the place in which it is inscribed. Yeah, it is a Prashasti inscribed in Prayaga, and therefore it is called as Prayaga Prashasti, also known as Allahabad pillar inscription, right? I'm hoping that makes sense, UPSC lover. Um, okay. Sahil has another question. A wide range of artifacts. Exactly, Sahil. The all of these artifacts I mentioned right now, right? Like pottery, jewelry, ornaments, weapons, vessels. All of these are different kinds of artifacts, different kinds of products, right? So these are a wide range of products. Cool. Tanya is here with us. Hi, Tanya. What were fortified cities? Fortified cities again is nothing but a huge wall running around a particular city, just like how we have boundary walls for our houses, right? So that other people will not come inside so easily. Just like that, in ancient times, the whole of a city had a wall. Just imagine how big that wall used to be, because it's protecting the entire city, right? So fortification is nothing but a wall running around the entire city to protect itself, right? So that's fortification, Sahib. And mostly we had fortified cities only in ancient India. Okay, so we were near votive, right? Like votive is basically nothing but religious donations made to religious institutions. So under these inscriptions, we find a variety of information, right? Let's say I'm donating, yeah, and I'm obviously, when I'm donating a particular land, an inscription is made, an inscription is written down. In that inscription, my name will be written because I'm the donor, yeah, because my name will be there, and the name of the donee will also be there, as in like who is receiving this grant, yeah, my occupation, the occupation of the donee, yeah, different other details like at what period or like what date was this land grant made, yeah, different personal details. So if you read inscriptions, read all of these land grant inscriptions, you will get to know a lot of information about who was wealthy, who was not, yeah, like different source kinds of information we'll be able to gather by looking at the inscriptions, right? So yeah, that. And yeah, like through the same inscriptions we'll also get to know about different kind of people living in the towns. For example, it's not just one category of people which were living. As I mentioned in the previous slide, it's not just craft person or it's not just elite people who were living in the towns, though they form the majority of the population, right? But on the sidelines, washermen, weavers, scribes, carpenters, potters, goldsmiths, blacksmiths, official, teachers, merchants, kings, like just look at the wide range of occupations of people who were living in the cities, right? There are many, which means irrespective of the occupational background, if anybody wants to stay in a town or a city, they can, right? So that's the information again we've got from what do we say, the votive inscriptions, right? So yeah, so following that, there were sometimes guilds or shrenis, which are basically associations or organizations of craft producers and merchants, right? People basically came together who are of same occupation, especially craftsmen, right? All of these craftsmen came together, they formed a group, right? If they are in a group, like one will help the other, right? Let's say I'm a merchant and other person is also a merchant in the group. I don't have certain products, I'll ask him for help, then he can easily give it to me because we have that kind of relation between us, we have that sort of informal trust between us, right? So those human relations are very important and they are facilitated by these guilds or shrenis, right? Raw material was procured, production was regulated, like what was the market price that is supposed to be fixed. All of these rules and regulations were the decisions for them were taken within the guild or the shreni, right? So obviously, like craft person, they did a lot of craft work, right? It almost looked like they needed a lot of iron tools to meet the growing demand of urban elites, whatever they had to make, right? Like irrespective of what the product is, almost like every product needed iron tools because you have to mend something, like shape something. So iron tools were very very important, and that is why we see a increasing use of iron back in those times, right? So that's the slide. Okay. uh, Sahil, I think I don't have my textbook in front of me, but like, could you please explain what this figure 2.6 is? Or like, can you just like hold back till the end of the class? Then probably like I'll have a look at the textbook and say, yeah. Uh, what was, what if, yeah, Sahil, the exact thing I was mentioning, right? Like, what if is that kind of inscription which only talks about the land grants made to religious institutions and not to anything else. Land grants made to religious institutions are described in an inscription, and those inscriptions are called as votive. Right? I'm hoping that's clear. What is the meaning of procured? Procured is nothing but like gathering or collecting, like getting. Yeah. Okay. I'll quickly move on to the next. So in that case, from the cities, we majorly will be talking about the trade, right? Trade which is happening in both the subcontinent and also external trade. But for now, we'll just be talking about the trade within the subcontinent. Yeah, like first we'll start with within the subcontinent. So from the 6th century BCE itself, when these cities started emerging, land and river routes crisscross the subcontinent, like extended in various directions. What does this mean? Land roads were like properly constructed. Some sort of infrastructure for riverine trade was also facilitated, right? So we had like major important land routes and river routes available within the subcontinent. For example, overland, right? So from within the subcontinent, this road was almost extended to Central Asia and beyond, right? Because Central Asia was a major exporter slash importer which used to do like continuous trade with Indian subcontinent people, right? And at the same time, ports also facilitated trade along the coastline, right? Like especially when it comes to riverine trade or sea trade, right? If you look at the Arabian Sea side, which is the western side, right? The trade used to happen with East and North Africa alongside West Asia, right? Present day Saudi Arabian countries like Oman, Iran, Kuwait, Egypt, all of these countries are towards the west of Indian subcontinent. So along the west coast, there were different ports, right? Konkan port, there were two different ports in Maharashtra, one in Gujarat, one in Kerala, like Kochi port and all, right? So through these western ports, this trade used to happen with the western side of the subcontinent. But when it comes to the eastern side, towards the Bay of Bengal side, right, trade usually used to happen with Southeast Asian countries or majorly China, right? So that's the trade with the other countries, but which is happening from the subcontinent, right? So rulers often try to control these trade routes, right, because they are important, and there'll be a lot of revenue which can be generated once you control the routes, right? So that was very important for a ruler to take control of the route because revenue, right? So again, those who like traveled between these routes varied from different categories, right? In the sense that there were peddlers who basically walked on foot, who traveled on foot, right? They were also using these routes alongside these bullock carts or like caravans or horse tongas and all. People who were driving those also used the same routes, right? So these routes, irrespective of how the trade is happening, like how the trade persons are carrying out their trade, either by walk or either by carts, caravans, doesn't matter, but they're using the same important strategic trade routes, right? So okay, so many names have come up, which okay, so I think you were referring back to the trade from the eastern coast and western coast, right, Sahil? So in that case, I was just saying, like roughly remember from the western coast of the subcontinent, right? Which western coast, just imagine a map, right? Like from the western coast, which is towards the Sea side, from there, imports and exports used to happen to the Africa and West Asia, right? Just remember two names, Africa and West Asia. Trade used to happen with the western coast of Indian subcontinent. But when you come to the eastern coast of Indian subcontinent, trade used to happen with Southeast Asia and China, right? Here, Sahil, this whole from here to here are the names and like different specifics, right? So west coast, Africa and West Asia, east coast, Southeast Asia and China. Just remember these four names. Yeah. Okay. Um, cool. So along with like peddlers, along with caravan people, there were also seafarers, right? Like what are seafarers mean? Basically, they're sailing on a boat or a ship to long distances, yeah, to conduct trade activities, yeah. But at any cost, traveling in the sea at night for almost so many days is obviously risky, right? Because what if there's a sudden storm, or what if the weather conditions are bad, or what if you're stuck in between the sea and like you've lost your way, there's no navigation or something. So it's obviously risky, right? It's a risk to your life, but nonetheless it's highly profitable. That is why people who like, even though it's risky, most of the people wanted to carry out sea trade because it's highly profitable, right? So that's that. And because of all of this trade and all, merchants were becoming richer and richer. They were becoming very wealthy, right? Out of these merchant groups, one successful merchant groups was that of Masattuvan. The spelling is here again. It's Masattuvan, right? It's Masattuvan. It's in Tamil, right? It's Tamil land basically. And when you come to like present day Maharashtra or like central western India, you have Sattavahas and Sethis. Sethis are nothing but like present day Sethis, right? These were like rich merchants once upon a time, like back in those times when extensive trade was going on through land and also river routes, right? They became richer. So what are these uh, sorry, what were these some kind of goods that were imported and exported, right? Starting from as minimal as salt, which is an everyday ingredient, right, which you put in your curries or any other cooking items. So starting from like as minimal as salt till almost like everyday food, the materials you wear, which is cloth, metal ores, finished products, stone, timber, medicinal plants, like certain other rare valuable materials like precious stones, jewelry and all. So all of these materials were imported and exported, right? So in these different varieties or different ranges of products, trade was happening. Yeah, especially pepper, right? Because pepper is one such unique item which was grown especially in India, especially in the Kerala and Tamil Nadu parts. Yeah, and that was in great demand in the Roman Empire. So imagine from southern part of India, yeah, from the western coast, trade used to happen with the Roman Empire for spices. That is amazing, right? Because now in the 21st century we have all of this technology and all, we can imagine that happening. But back in 6th 7th centuries BCE, it was must have been a really difficult task, but nonetheless trade was giving an opportunity for the development of the empire. That is why trade was an important factor. Yeah, so spices were especially traded with Roman Empire. Okay, how do we learn so many names? I mean, it's not necessary that you have to mention all of these names in your papers, Sahil, like exams. Just remember like a couple of them, right? Like I mean, if you just mention like two or three, it's fine. Yeah, they're not that important also, but just to give you a rough idea, I'm just mentioning the different varieties, right? Yeah, like different kinds of spices, right? It's not just pepper and chili, but like cardamom, ilachi, different range of spices, whatever are available. Okay, so that was trade which was happening within the subcontinent and also with the outside countries, outside external trade, right? So from there, we'll quickly move on to coins and kings, right? So coins and kings, like were kings the only people to issue the coins? Did anybody else have the authority to mint coins, or like how, like what role did coins play in the subcontinent? Yeah, we'll look at all of these questions in this slide. Yeah, so to some extent exchanges were facilitated by the introduction of coinage, right? Before this we had barter system, which is a good for a good, right? But with the introduction of coinage, with people started minting so many coins, giving value to those coins, these transactions were mainly happening with the help of currency and not barter system anymore, right? So that was an important change which was happening in the 6th century BCE. Along with that, we also have punch marked coins, which were usually made up of silver and copper, right? So these were like early mints, like in the early stages in the 6th, 5th centuries, punch marked coins were made, right? So we do know and we have come across a lot of punch marked coins when excavations were happening, right? Because the transactions or number of punch marked coins were very high, right? Because all of them were stored basically. So when excavations were happening, it was very easy for the archaeologists to come across all of these punch marked coins. They have recovered so many of them from different sites, right? From different sites throughout the subcontinent. So in that way, coins are important. And in order for you to like study coins, right? Like if you study coins, you'll obviously get a lot of information. But you have to like sit down and carefully study coins, examine them, compare it with other coins, right? So the study of all of this is called as numismatics, right? The spelling is, I'm writing it down, Numismatics, right? Numismatics. So the study of coins is called as numismatics, but the people who study coins are called as numismatists. The spelling is here. Yeah. So numismatics, numismatists, whatever it is, they were able to like read all of these coins. They were able to examine these coins, right? And they reconstructed possible commercial networks. Yeah. Let's say, and I'll just give you one rough example, right? Let's say it's a Shatavahana coin, for example, because we have Shatavahanas, kings ka names and kings ka faces minted onto those coins, right? And that's how we identify it as a Shatavahana coin. Let's say it is found somewhere in present day Iran, yeah, or present day Egypt. What does that indicate? How did the coin travel from here to there? Because trade was happening, right? Probably Shatavahanas might have imported something from Egypt, and in return they have to pay money, right? Like they have to obviously like pay something. So they used to pay in these coins. That is why these coins traveled from here to there, to Egypt. So what do we see here? A connection between Egypt and Satavahanas in terms of trade. Right? This is just one example. But in the same manner, there were so many other examples which give us a lot of information about all of these commercial trade networks. Right? So that's one. And the same thing, right? Like if there are certain symbols or certain something punch marked onto these coins, it can either be the names of the rulers, it can either be something from the religious books, right? Or it can be even sometimes the faces of the rulers, yeah, some important symbols of the dynasty, whatever it is, in different symbols were trenched onto the coins, right? So by looking at that, by identifying all of these unique factors, these numismatists have done a great job in identifying which kingdom did it belong to, right? Because otherwise it will just be a huge chaos. Yeah, you have to identify who minted these, who did it belong to. Only then you will have some idea, right? So numismatists have actually done a great job in identifying that. Yeah. Uh, yeah, numismatics is nothing but the study of coins, Sahil. Yeah. Okay. So usually, right, in the present day Indian subcontinent, only like one organization has the authority to mint coins, right, which is the RBI, Reserve Bank of India. All of us know that. Nobody else has the authority to mint coins. But back in those times, it was not just the ruler. Ruler also minted coins, obviously. But it's not just the ruler. Sometimes merchants, bankers, and even townspeople had the authority to mint these coins, to issue coins. Right? So we're basically seeing the distribution of the authority. Right? So the first coins which basically bear the names as well as images of the rulers were issued by the Indo-Greeks. Yeah, Indo-Greeks were these people who established an empire for themselves in the northwestern part of the subcontinent in the 2nd century BCE, right? They were basically the first rulers to issue coins with their names as well as faces of the rulers, right? But on the other side, if you look at who were the first to issue gold coins, they were Kushanas in the 1st century CE, right? So these are all like some general important facts. So I highly recommend to remember all of these facts, right? Okay, Tanishk has a question. Yes, Tanishk, what exactly is that? In a source in the praise of Samudragupta, there's an image on the side of that source of a sculpture. वो किसका sculpture है, कनिष्का और समुद्रगुप्ता? uh, I mean, if you just give me a second, Tanishk, can you tell me like which page number it's in? I'll quickly go through it. Okay, I found it. It's in page 37, right? The sculpture with no head, basically. If that is what you're referring to, it's basically the sculpture of a Kushana king. Yeah, I found it, Tanish. Don't worry, it's on page 37. It's a sculpture with no head, right? So it's basically the sculpture of a Kushana king, right? We don't even know whether it's Kanishka or not. It's just some random Kushana king, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's all is your question, right? Yeah, that's random Kushana king, Tanishk. Um, Anyways, is that it or like can we move on? Um, Tanishk, I mean, as far as I remember, like when I was reading this particular chapter, I never came across the definite conclusion that it is the figure of Kanishka. Yeah, for some reason I only remember that it only belonged to some particular Kushana king. Again, there's a question right there which asks that what are the elements in this particular sculpture which tell us that it is an image of a king, but nowhere it is specified that it belonged to Kanishka. So could you just like go back and probably like read that again, or if you still think it's Kanishka, then probably like I'll also look into it and like clarify your doubt. Yeah, but for now I only remember it's just like random Kushana king, right? So just go back and like look at that, Tanishk. Right, Sahil, page 42. Figure 2.6 and page number 44 का Malabar Coast. Yeah, so right, so Sahil, this image 2.6, again, this sculpture is in one of the places in Mathura, right? This is not the whole image, but this is just one part of the sculpture, which is a huge sculpture in Mathura, right? So if you look at the image, Sahil, if the textbook is right in front of you, just go to page number 42, you'll get a better idea, right? So in that textbook, on the pedestal is nothing but the bottom part of the inscription, right? Where you have all of these different women standing in different postures, right? And also you have certain animals there on the both sides of the sculpture, right? So on the pedestal is a Prakrit inscription. So even below that, the bottom part of it, you find some random writings written on it, right? So that inscription, it's written in Prakrit, right? It's basically saying that there's a woman by name Nagapiya, She is the wife of a goldsmith. Goldsmith is basically known as Sovanika back in those days in Prakrit, right? So that husband's name was called as Dharmaka. Yeah. So this couple, probably they were wealthy and rich. That is why they had enough money to install this image in a particular shrine. Yeah. So it's basically giving us the information as to who installed this shrine, right? So it's just that it's in today's Mathura. Yeah. I'm hoping that clears your question, Sahil. And also page number 44, Malabar Coast, Periplus. Oh, yeah, so this is one of the source boxes, right? So I was thinking like in the next class, I'll do all the source boxes at one time. So then we can have a detailed discussion of the Malabar Coast, right, Sal? So we'll look at this whole source in the next class. Yeah? Okay. Um, Tanish says it's wrong because it's a random statue. Yeah, see, fair enough. Even like I'm thinking on the same lines, Tanish. Even I don't think it's genuinely a Kanishka statue because it's not mentioned there. And unless you have a head, you can't really tell whose statue it is. Because all of the kings almost dressed alike, right? They had this huge jewelry, they had all of these, I don't know, what do you call them? Like kurtas. Not exactly kurtas, but some sort of clothing which runs till your knees, right? All of the kings dressed in the same manner. So unless you have the head, you can't really say who it belonged to. Yeah. So even I think it's a random Kushana ruler. Okay. Cool. So if that all that's it, the doubts are, then we can quickly move on. Yeah. So I was basically telling the first coins which had images and names were by Indo-Greeks. The first gold coins issued were by Kushanas, right? So these coins, right, like they were virtually identical in weight when you compare them with the Roman coins or the Parthian coins of Iran, right? So again, if they are identical in weight, if they look similar or something like that, again we can draw conclusions, we can draw information that there was some sort of connection between Kushanas and Roman emperors or Indo-Greeks, right? That is why there are some kinds of similarities between the coins. Yeah. So by looking at all of these, by studying all of these aspects, numismatists have come up with different conclusions, right? So again, there was widespread use of gold coins. Yeah. What does this indicate? There are so many gold coins available. Matlab, there was like great range of transactions that were happening, like enormous value of transactions. So many transactions, right? So that also indicates. And besides, hordes of Roman coins have been found from archaeological sites in South India. Again, see, it's again ties back to the spices point. Huge demand for spices from South India in Roman Empire, right? So once spices are going from India to Roman Empire, yeah, obviously there was Roman coins are coming into the Indian subcontinent, and we do find a lot of Roman coins in South India, right? So these are all different evidences that we have to prove our theories or to prove our points, right? So that's that. Enormous is nothing but huge, yeah, something big. Okay. Cool. I'll just quickly move on. Okay. So it is but obvious that networks are like trade networks are just not limited to like within political boundaries, but definitely external trade was also happening because Roman Empire, right? Central Asia. All of those coins are found in India, which means external trade was also happening. There were a lot of connection between different kingdoms, right? So we've just seen that some kind of bankers or some kinds of townspersons have the authority to issue coins, In the same manner, there were other group of people. In fact, this time there are tribal people, right? For example, Yodayas of Punjab and Haryana, who basically ruled in the first century CE, right? They also had the authority to issue coins, right? Because we have discovered, or like archaeologists have discovered, several thousand copper coins issued by Yodayas, right? What do they tell again? Yodayas were basically interested in the economic exchanges, right? They had a lot of interest in participating in the economy, right? That is why they came up with their own coins. That is the justification given by so many archaeologists. Yeah. And when it comes to Gupta rulers also had a spectacular range of gold coins, right? And the earliest ones which were issued are remarkable for their purity, like pure gold, like 100% gold. But once we, like, centuries passed by, as time passed by, probably due to like lack of raw material or like lack of gold reserves available, they started mixing gold with certain other things. Let's say 80% gold and 20% copper, or something like that. That purity is gone as you go ahead, right? So these coins obviously facilitated long distance transactions, and because of that, kings obviously benefited because there was so much profit, there was so much of trade, right? So in that sense, it is really coins were really important. Uh, okay, Aditya is here. Aditya 11th standard, right? Uh, yes, Aditya, yes, we can. I mean, like, as of now, we're doing chapter 3, right? So once we finish that chapter 3, we can start term 2 ka syllabus, Aditya, if that's not a problem. Also, like, probably we can discuss more about this in tomorrow's, evening's class. Yeah. So, Monday से start करना. ठीक है, like, yeah, we can try that, Aditya. No worries, probably we'll start from Monday. Cool. Thanks for suggesting, by the way. Um, okay, so we see a lot of gold coins, right? But all of a sudden, once you came to the 6th century CE, right, we almost observe that there are no more gold coins in transactions. Like, gold coins are vanishing, or they're becoming less in number, right? What does this mean? What does this indicate? Right? Does that mean there was some kind of economic crisis that was happening? We don't know. Probably it can be, it might not be. So to come up with an answer to this, historians are basically divided on this issue because they have different theories to this, right? Some historians suggest that Roman Empire basically collapsed, right? Like, Roman Empire in the 4th, 5th century CE, it collapsed in Western Europe, right? Because of that, there was no more long distance trade happening between the Indian subcontinent and Roman Empire. Yeah. Because of that, the prosperity of the Indian kingdoms have been affected, and that is why there were no more gold coins available. That's number one theory, which was given by a set of historians, right? So other historians say that there were new networks of trade that was emerging, like different trade routes, different riverine routes. Yeah, that is why gold coins were becoming less and less in number. That's another theory. Yeah. So other set of historians say that no, that is not the case. Actually, gold coins were still in use, but they were not they were not found during the archaeological excavations, right? It's just that we didn't come across them, but definitely they were in use even after 6th century CE, right? So these were some of the theories suggested by different set of historians as to why there were no more gold coins after 6th century CE, right? Again, we do not have a definite answer for this. We can believe in whatever theory we want to, right? So yeah. Raviraj is here with us. Hi, Raviraj. Good afternoon. what was the meaning of latter's interest? Where did we come across that word? I mean, latter is nothing but the later, right? Like the, let's say you and me. So that me becomes the latter, right? Or him and her, that her becomes the latter. Yeah, it's just a denotion used to refer to the second object of the statement, right? So that's hoarded is nothing but again how do I put hoard? Hoarded is just like, let's say, some kind of vessel or some kind of pottery in which all of these valuable materials, especially gold, was preserved, was was saved, right? So that whole pottery or that whole vessel containing the gold stuff is called the hoard, right? It was basically buried deep down into the ground. Yeah, they used to dig the soil, keep the hoard inside, cover it with the soil, because they have to protect that, right? So they are basically referred to as hoards. Okay, so we'll quickly finish up this part also, because I think we'll be running out of time towards the end. So yeah, like back to basics, how are inscriptions deciphered, right? So firstly, we'll start off with deciphering Brahmi, right? Brahmi is again a very important script. Yeah. So it was used in most of the Ashokan inscriptions, right? So from the late 18th century, European scholars aided by different Indian pundits. It's not just Indian scholars, but also European scholars started working on deciphering this particular Brahmi script, right? They used Bengali and Devanagari script, in which we write present day Hindi, right? They have compared and contrasted all of these different scripts, and they finally somehow discovered Brahmi, right? So all of these Ashokan inscriptions were in fact written in Prakrit language, which in turn is written in Brahmi script, right? So just to give you like hardcore information or like factual information as to who discovered this, it was James Prinsep, right? And when was it discovered? It was discovered in the year 1838, right? So regarding Brahmi, you only have to remember four important points, right? Number one, discovered by James Prinsep. Number two, it was discovered in 1838. Number three, this particular script was used in most of the Ashokan inscriptions, right? Number four, people usually took the help of Bengali and Devanagari script to decipher Brahmi, right? Four important points, very crucial, just note them down. Yeah. So on the other side, we also have Kharoshthi script, which is a different script, right? So this Kharoshthi was basically used in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent, right? Here we have coins of Indo-Greek kings, right? So just like how Bengali language was used to decipher Brahmi, here Indo-Greek coins were used to decipher Kharoshthi, right? Let's say, for example, if there's a coin and on the coin, let's say Kushana, right? Kanishka. The name of the king is Kanishka. In on those particular coins, the name of the Kanishka is inscribed both in Kharoshthi script as well as Greek script, because Greek was widely spoken in the northwestern frontier, right? So Greek scholars, they already know how to read Greek, right? So with the help of that Greek, they basically identified what Kharoshthi script is, right? So because by using the Indo-Greek coins, historians have deciphered the Kharoshthi script as well, and after discovering the Kharoshthi script, it became much easier to decipher all of these inscriptions, right? So in that way, we have come to know a lot of information once the Kharoshthi and Brahmi scripts were deciphered, right? So yeah. Yes, Aditya, we can do that. Noted, Aditya. historical evidences from inscriptions, right? So we look at like two major important Ashokan inscriptions to just get to know rough information as to how does epigraphists and historians work together. Only if they work together we'll get to know some random information. But if they don't collaborate, if there is no interaction between epigraphists and historians, it's useless, right? Because we won't be able to know much information, right? So first thing, the first inscription we'll be looking at is not one particular inscription per se, but randomly, if you look at inscriptions, you come across names like Devanampiya or Piyadasi, right? Instead of these titles were basically given to Ashoka. But in some of the inscriptions, Ashoka's name is not mentioned in particular, right? It only mentions these titles. So you don't know who those titles belong to. You can attribute those titles to anybody. But in the same time, if you examine some other inscriptions or if you examine some other texts, let's say, yeah, there you have information that, like these titles basically belong to Ashoka. And if you match and examine both of these sources together, then you can like confidently say that Devanampiya and Piyadasi are basically titles of Ashoka, right? So that kind of collaboration should be there. That kind of interaction of sources, that kind of examining of sources together will result in much detailed and greater information, right? So that's number one. We did not come till there, Sahil. I'll just talk about Apollodotus, right? Okay, so that's number one, like interaction of epigraphists and historians. And you may have also noticed that Ashoka claims that earlier rulers had no arrangements to receive reports, right? He's basically talking about the spy system. Yeah, before Ashoka, there was no ruler in India who had or who maintained a spy system. It was only Ashoka who did it for the first time. And also, like he says, whenever he's in work or whenever he's sleeping, eating, whatever work he's doing, if spy has some information, even if it's in the night, like when he's sleeping also, it doesn't matter. You just have to come and report to me immediately. Yeah, that sort of provision was not there for earlier rulers. Ashoka was the first one to make that as a rule, right? So historians have to constantly assess statements made in inscriptions to judge whether they are true, plausible, or exaggerations. Again, very important, right? Let's say I'm the ruler, even if it's the truth, even if it's not, probably I am exaggerating the statement, whatever it is, I want somebody to write something good about me. Just look at the Prayaga Prashasti, right? Prayaga Prashasti, all of the information written on that might not be true. Sometimes they are just false statements, sometimes they are just exaggerations, right? So what do we notice here? If you're reading a particular inscriptions, it always is best for us to not look at it as the face value, right? You should never consider inscriptions at the face value because we don't know how accurate they are. That is why we always have to corroborate it with the textual evidence. Both of them has to go hand in hand, right? So that's again how you read certain inscriptions. And sometimes you have if you like read a particular inscriptions, right, you have certain images, certain phrases written within the brackets. Why do epigraphists use brackets, right? This is again to give us the basic context, right? Sometimes the words or sometimes the sentences might be not clear. Yeah, they might just be like half sentences, not properly framed or something. So in order to give the reader a better understanding, in order to provide the context for the ruler, context for the audience, right, these epigraphists they put in certain phrases which will complete the sentence. And to just denote that epigraphists are adding these, they are not a part of the original inscriptions, they put those extra information in the brackets, right? So that's again important. So historians also have to assess certain other kinds of things. For example, all of these inscriptions were being inscribed, but did people actually read them? That's the important question, right? Like there should definitely be an audience, otherwise there's no use. Yeah. Let's say randomly at some place they are inscribed. Firstly, were people literate? Did they have the capability to read? And even if they can read, did they stop by at that particular inscription? Did they have so much time to stand there, read the inscription thoroughly, understand it, discuss it with some other people? Yeah, did they have so much time? We don't know. These are all the questions which we do not have answers for. Right? So let's say again, at least when it comes to Ashoka, right? Like Ashoka issued all of these inscriptions in Prakrit, and that too like Pataliputra Prakrit. So let's say one inscription was inscribed in Tamil Nadu. Does Tamil Nadu people know Prakrit? Their language is Tamil, right? They are very fluent in Tamil. But if inscriptions are being issued in Prakrit, will they know? Like, do they know the language? Can they read it? Or it's just some waste of resources and time to install an inscription? These are all like some logical questions, some logistical questions which we need to think about. Right? Yeah, Piyadasi was the title of Ashoka Sahil. Absolutely right there. Plausible and exaggeration meanings. Plausible is nothing but possible, right? The capability or the possibleness. And exaggeration is if there is a certain issue, like hyping it up and saying, let's say, I'm a good person. In order to exaggerate it, I'll be like, wow, I'm an amazing person, I'm an awesome person. Like, if the issue is only like a little, like hyping it up and like giving it so much of credit even though it's not worth, so that kind of thing is called exaggeration. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So firstly, were they literate to read? Did they know all of these languages? And nextly, even if people read them, did people actually follow those orders? Again, we don't know. Answers to all of these questions are very, very difficult to find because we do not have that kind of information. We do not have those many sources. Yeah, that is why it is really, really important for us not to consider inscriptions at the face value, but instead corroborate it with the different other sources of information we have. Right? So, yeah. So that brings us to basically the limitations of inscriptional evidence, right? There definitely are certain limitations. For example, they can be technical limitations, right? Because these have been inscribed like almost so many centuries and so many millenniums before. In that case, because of time, whatever is inscribed on them, they might have been just faded, right? So probably you won't be able to recognize them properly now because of time. So those are some of the technical limitations we have when it comes to inscriptions. Letters might be missing, letters might be damaged or something like that. Yeah. And even the meaning of the words, right? Let's say there's a particular word which has a different meaning in Pataliputra and which has a different meaning in Kashmir, which has a different meaning in Tamil. Yeah. So depending upon the places, depending upon the context, depending on the language, the meaning of the words keep changing. So that again, we can't attribute a universal meaning to these words, right? So that is why these are some of the limitations, and all of these epigraphists, they have been constantly debating, constantly examining as to what do these inscriptions actually tell us. Were they of any importance, or are they just like some random rocks lying around, right? So we don't know. Added to that, there are so many inscriptions which have not been deciphered yet because we don't know the script. For example, Harappan script, right? We absolutely don't know what Harappan people did, yeah, except for some basic facts, because we don't have the inscriptions. They are not deciphered. We don't know their script, right? And even though some are deciphered, they have not been published. They have not been translated, right? So these are all some of the technical limitations or logistical limitations or like genuine limitations of inscriptional evidence. They do not give us a full picture. It's always an incomplete, empty picture, right? So that's that. So basically what do we say? Whatever inscriptions are available to us are only a fraction of the whole. We do not have all of them, right? So another problem is uh, these daily activities, right? Like let's say, what is a common person doing daily? All of these inscriptions, they only talk about elite people, they talk about kings, they talk about like rich people or like land grants and stuff, which is happening politically or economically. But things which happen on a daily level, right, like day to day basis, like how does a common person lead their life, yeah, like basic stuff, they are not mentioned in inscriptions. So we definitely do not have information as to what a common person did in his lifetime. We only have information about specific things which are important, which are unique, right? So in that sense also some of the information is missing, right? And who usually, like whoever is inscribing this inscription, they will put down their own perspective. They will say what is right according to them, but in some cases that might not be the truth, right? So that is also another limitation. Yeah, so that is why the whole conclusion for all of this is for us to juxtapose these kind of inscriptional evidences with another source of information and then examine them, right? So that kind of juxtaposition of sources is really important for us to arrive at different conclusions, right? So yeah, basically it does not give us a full picture, it only gives us a half empty picture, right? Now there are certain new inscriptions that are being deciphered, new languages that are being deciphered, right? And also the focus for historians is not to focus on political aspects anymore, but instead focus on the economic changes, social changes, and also sometimes marginalized group ka histories, right? So this again is a challenge because we have to go back to those old sources and examine them in a different light. That is also important, right? So fresh investigations, like new investigations or like new strategies of analysis must be developed in order for us to gain a full picture, right? So yeah, that's all we have for today's class, and that also brings us to the end of the class, right? Let me just quickly go through the comments because I've like rushed through the last couple of slides. Sahil, we do have a class at 6 in the evening, but that's for 11th standard students, not for 12th standard, right? So it's not for you guys, it's for 11th class. Page number 48, last para. Sahil, if you're asking about the limitations of inscriptional evidence, right? So that basically talks about some of the inscriptions not being deciphered, right? Let's say, for example, take the example of Harappa itself, right? Harappa inscription is not deciphered yet, but if it would have been deciphered, then we would have had more information, right? That's number one. Some of the inscriptions are not deciphered. The second problem is, even though they are deciphered, they are not made public. Like, historians have been reading it, archaeologists have been reading it, but that information is not made public yet. It has not been published, right? And even if it is published, it has only been published in only one language or two languages, which means other people can't read it. People who do not know that language can't access it, right? So these are all different limitations of inscriptions, right? If is that the paragraph you're asking, Sahil, or did I just go overboard with some other topic? Yeah, okay. I think that answers your question. Source-based questions, boxes, information in next session. Please, yes, that is exactly what we're going to do in the next class, Sahil. So don't worry about that. But other than that, if you all have any questions regarding this chapter alone, right? Because we've almost completed the revision for this chapter, right? Only the source boxes and stuff is remaining. We will look at that in the next class. But like till then, if you all have any questions regarding this chapter, then let me know in the chat box. Since we're already past time, I'll try to wind this up. In the meanwhile, y'all can formulate your questions. Cool. So there's a crash course which is happening for 12th standard students. It already actually started. It's already started on 1st of November, right? It's a crash course until your exams. It's a 1.5 month course. The medium of instruction here is English, right? So if you are interested, the educators' names and the subjects are here. Have a look at them and feel free to join the crash course because it's highly, highly helpful, right? And yeah, thanks so much, guys, for tuning in on a Saturday morning. I know it's a little bit not comfortable because it's a morning class, right? But nonetheless, we've missed the class yesterday because there were some issues. So I had to postpone yesterday's class to today's morning. But from next time, we'll only be having classes in the evening, right? So don't worry about that. Um, cool. So thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys again on Monday, right? Where we'll be discussing these source-based questions and different boxes of the second chapter itself, right? So I'll see you guys then. Uh, no problem, Sahil. Will definitely help you in case you have any questions. New notions of kingship. Uh, yeah, we can take this up in next class along with the source boxes. Yeah, I'll make it a point to talk about new notions of kingship in the beginning of the class and then talk about the source boxes, right? If that's fine, Sahil. Okay, that being said, I think it's already like way past time. We have to like end the class. Okay, like have a great weekend, guys. Be safe. I'll see you guys again on Monday for the source boxes discussion, right? Bye. Take care till then.